welcome back to Vinyl Friday, where I go through my records in alphabetical order like a big nerd and talk about why I love them. This week is not an alphabetical week. This week is a Rubber Soul week! Woohoo! As you've probably surmised by now, I love this album very much. And the song that we're going to do today is one of my favorite songs on this album. Let's have a listen. Today's song is If I Needed Someone, track 6, is that correct? Track 6, side 2 of Rubber Soul, and my god is this a good one. Let's start at the beginning and end at the end. Here we go. When I say that I feel like this riff is divine, I mean that literally. There's a real spiritual element to this track. Honestly, that looping, almost droning riff is a big part of it for me. It's played on George's 12-string Rickenbacker, which he first employed on Hard Day's Night. I believe it was a gift from Rickenbacker. When I listen to this riff, I think it sounds a lot like the Byrds. And so I looked into it and it turns out that George wrote this riff with the Byrds' interpretation of the Bells of Rhymney in mind. This is what their riff sounds like. And then of course, any excuse to listen to this riff again. I really enjoy that we've sort of come full circle here because George started out with this 12-string Rickenbacker, and then the Byrds picked it up because they really liked how he sounded with it. And then he picked up what the Byrds were doing and emulated it because he liked what they were doing. I think it's a really good example of how so many of these acts in the 60s were listening so actively to each other and borrowing and being inspired by their peers. In the media, we love a good article about a rivalry, but really, in a lot of cases, I think the artists are all just admiring each other, and I think that's a beautiful thing. Although, in some cases, it is a rivalry, and I'm very much looking forward to coming back to that. I love how during the verses, George switches from playing the riff to having the guitar double the melody. Here. Ooh. And that sounds great because it's got that lovely 12-string jangle, and then right at the end, he does this rake across the strings so that it sounds better when he does it. That really makes the song dazzle, really lights it up. I love that sound. I don't think I'd ever want a 12-string because they take such a long time to tune. They take twice as long as it takes to tune a regular guitar, which is ironic given that I tune pianos for a living, and there are like 230 tuning pins on a piano. I don't want to be spending all of my free time tuning guitar strings, so I guess that makes sense. Moving on. A real cornerstone of this piece, as is the case for a lot of Beatles songs, is the 3-part harmony, so I think we should give it some attention. This song doesn't open with harmonies, unlike other songs on this album that are really harmony heavy, like Nowhere Man. He's a real Nowhere Man. Nowhere Man just like slaps you across the face with 3-part harmonies. Boom! The song started. All 3 Beatles. Sorry, Ringo. Whoops. All 3 Beatles who are not drummers are singing. With this song, George gets a little bit of time on his own, and then whammo! 3-part harmony. So while it's maybe not as striking as Nowhere Man, it does have the same impact. Check it out. Guitars, bass, drums, George, Beatles! Oh, it's just got that lovely, chunky cluster of Beatle voices. It is so distinct. There's something about the different timbre of their voices. They don't all sound the same. John has a very nasal vocal. George really drawls when he's singing. Paul's voice is incredibly varied in its different tonal qualities, but for some reason when they all come together, it blends and it's magical. With that being said, I think that there are some times when they're singing in harmony on this song that... Hi! Check it out, he's wrapped his tail around my neck! Tail hug! So occasionally, different vocal parts do jump out. Let's look at some examples. On the line, if I had some more time to spend, then I guess I'd be with you, my friend. We're rhyming here. John's voice really jumps out at me. It sounds like this. If I had some more time to spend, if it's clear, but it sounds like he's just giving it 100%. And the same from Paul. Paul is singing this. If I had some more time to spend, I especially love Be With You, My Friend. Because the first time he sings, more time to spend. The second time he sings, you, my friend. Instead of coming back down again like, you, my friend. This is what that would sound like. Be with you, my friend. Be with you, my friend. See, it's way better the way that he sings it. Really nice. Good job, Paul McCartney. So yeah, we've got two of the world's best songwriters. I was gonna say at that point in time, but you know, in the canon of Western music, two of the best songwriters singing backing vocal to their younger bandmate and giving it 100%. I don't know what it is, but there's something about that that just warms the cockles of my heart. When they started the band and George was invited into the band, he was like 14, while John was somewhere around 17. It's only 3 years, but at that point in time, that is an enormous age gap, and apparently they never fully got over that. They always saw him as like this younger brother figure.
He was always about 9 months older than I. Even now, he's still 9 months older than me.
So George would have had to work so hard to get himself to a point where he was comparable to his bandmates, especially bandmates who sometimes took a bit of a patronizing attitude towards him.
I suppose I used to talk down to him a little bit, as you do to a sort of kid who's 1.5 years younger than him. Might have been a failing of mine to tend to sort of talk down to him because I'd known him as a younger kid.
I just love how when the music plays, they get it together and they click. That's not to say that they didn't get along. They were obviously getting along really well at this point in time. But I just love that these two senior band members allowed the associate band member, if you will, a time in the spotlight, and it is so well deserved because this is some really solid songwriting. It's not a very long song, but it is so beautiful. And I think those 3 harmonies are a big part of why it sounds so good. There's also a lovely quality to the way that they enunciate the words in this song. Let's listen to this line as an example. Carve your number on my wall and maybe you will get a call from me. If I needed someone. You combine that sort of lazy vocal enunciation with that sort of droning riff and that droning bass part even. We'll come back to that shortly. You get something that really beautifully anticipates 1966. You can hear that psychedelia is coming. So in a way, there's a lot about this song that situates it pretty firmly in Rubber Soul. Paul's playing bass lines that are just a little bit more complicated. We've got plenty of tambourine happening, and that 12-string guitar is a holdover from 1964. So they still sound very much like 1965 Beatles, but there is a quality of this song that almost transcends the album and anticipates what's to come on the next album. On that note, this is one of the very last songs that they ever performed live, not counting the rooftop concert. So live before a wide audience at Candlestick Park in San Francisco. It's an interesting version because they slow it down a lot. That gives it an almost sluggish feel, kind of like rain. I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's much less sort of early Beatles perky and sitting more comfortably in the sort of psychedelic head music Revolver period. There's a user on YouTube who took audio of that concert and added a whole bunch of reverb to it. In that context, it sounds like it would actually fit perfectly on Revolver, alongside songs like Tomorrow Never Knows. And in a sense, that completely makes sense because their last performance was on the 29th of August of 1966. That was only 3 or 4 weeks after Revolver had actually been released. So it very much marked a turning point in their career, namely the shift away from music that you could perform live to exploring the limits of the studio environment. But I do think that this song really anticipates that. In any case, it just all sounds beautiful together. It's time to talk about the bass. I love the bass part on this song. I actually put this one on my top 50 Paul McCartney bass lines video. This next bass line is actually very simple in that it doesn't change very much over the course of the song, but it holds down a crucial and solid bottom end. This is from the 1965 album Rubber Soul. The song is If I Needed Someone. It is such an integral part of the song. It would not be the same song without. Perhaps ironically, I think the best person to explain this to you would be the piano correspondent. Hey piano correspondent! Hello Vinyl Friday fam! So as you will have seen from the bass correspondent, the bass line is doing this. That riff is in the key of A. Above that, an A chord is playing. However, when that chord changes down a tone to a G, the bass continues to play the same riff, and that creates this glorious chord. Isn't that delectable? And that is one of 700 reasons that I love this song very much. Back to you. On the subject of the song sounding like kind of a prediction of what's to come, I actually think the melody itself is completely timeless. It is a very beautiful, very simple melody. I think you could probably take it and inject it into just about any style of Western music from any of the following decades, and it would still sound really nice. Actually, let's see if that's true. If I needed someone to love, you're the one that I've been thinking of. If I needed someone to love, you're the one that I've been thinking of. If I needed someone, if I needed someone to love, if I needed someone to love, you're the one that if I needed someone to love, you're the one that I've been thinking of. If I needed someone to love, you're the one that I've been thinking of. If I needed someone. I suppose the next thing to talk about would be the lyrics. It's kind of interesting because he says that they're about Patty Harrison, but I find them almost ambivalent. Maybe you will get a call from me. If I had some more time to spend, then I guess I'd be with you, my friend. It's not exactly emphatic, shall we say, but it works for the song. There are perhaps some of the lines that I find a little bit overly simplistic or predictable. Had you come some other day, it might not have been like this, but you see now I'm too much in love. Perhaps a little uninspired, and I'm sure that there will be those of you who disagree with me. And if so, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I do always read the comments, and I really love hearing all of your takes. Because I do think it has moments that are very strong, like, carve your number on my wall and maybe you'll get a call from me. The use of the word carve is very deliberate and very visual. So I really like that line. Carve your number on my wall. Sometimes I feel like it doesn't match the spiritual quality of the song, but then if the lyrics were spiritual, I think the song could veer towards moralistic and maybe even boring, which George did sometimes tend towards in his more spiritual songs. Editor Nancy here. Please note that that's not to say that songs about spirituality can't be done well. For instance, I think that George Harrison does that really well on songs like My Sweet Lord. Or A Waiting on You All. It's just that sometimes these lyrics can be a bit naff. But yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. Do you feel like the quality of the lyrics in this song match the quality of the music in the song? Are they a good pairing? Do they sound like lyrics for the wrong song? What do you think? When I was in my Beatles cover band, the Elementary Penguins, this was actually, I think, one of our favorites to perform because you fall into a groove with it and it is very relaxing and very comfortable. And at the same time, because you're singing together, you all need to be listening very carefully to what your other bandmates are doing so that the blend of the vocals comes together perfectly. So in that way, it's a song that kind of binds you musically and and emotionally to your bandmates. So it's kind of a bonding song, if you will. In sum, I just think that this song is a thing of beauty, and it is genuinely one of my favorites on the album. I'm not going to say it is my favorite on the album, because it would be unfair to make me do that, but it is up there for me. Okay, there's one more thing that I want to share about this album. Earlier in the video, I mentioned something about rivalries. This song was kind of mired in drama. There's no other word for it, drama, between George Harrison and Graham Nash of the Hollies. The Hollies did a cover of this song. It sounds like this.
If I had some more time to spend, then I guess I'd be with you, my friend.
Following its release, when George Harrison was asked in an interview whether he had written the song for the Hollies, he said, and I quote, "Tell people I didn't write it for the Hollies. I think it's rubbish the way they've done it. They've spoiled it. The Hollies are alright musically, but the way they do their records, they sound like session men who have just got together in a studio without ever seeing each other. Technically good, yes, but that's all." Graham Nash was most displeased by this. In response, he says, and I quote, "Not only do these comments disappoint and hurt us, but we are sick and tired of everything the Beatles say or do to be taken as law. So the Beatles are the biggest group in the world, and George Harrison and the rest of them are entitled to their own opinions, but when things like this are said, they really must believe their own publicity." Drama! And then, if you think that this tiff ended in 1965, you would be wrong. Because in 2013, 12 years after George Harrison died, Graham Nash said in an interview, and I quote, "Pardon me if you don't like our fucking record, but keep it to yourself if you please." File that under 376 reasons that I think that Graham Nash is a bit of a prat. For what it's worth, I can kind of see what George means. Because when you listen to the Beatles version of this song, let's do that. There's so much character. You can hear the relationship of the three men in their vocal delivery. They sound like people who know each other, who love each other. And maybe I'm biased because I'm a huge Beatlemaniac. Don't know if you knew, but I do genuinely think that this song has a whole lot more heart than the Hollies version. I love this version. That's it from me. If you enjoyed this episode, or you would like to support any of the weird things that I do, be it talking about my records, or spending 2 months making puppets of myself and my sister, and then taking 1,000 stills to make into a stop-motion video of them, I'll leave a link in my description to my Buy Me a Coffee page, where you are most welcome to make a donation, but you are not obliged. No pressure, friends. Thank you to all of you who have made donations. I very much appreciate you. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you here next week. Have a great weekend! With the birds now he's wrapped his tail around my arm. You're a sweet boy. I love you. Interpretation. Try again.